Heavenly Father, I pray that you would give me permission to speak of your name. I thank you that your name is more glorious than anything that we could possibly think of or imagine, and therefore I pray that you would enable me to speak of your name with awe, reverence, and fear. Now, in the account of Moses and the burning bush in Exodus chapter 3, we read about how Moses is in the desert. He's tending his flocks, or the flocks of his father-in-law Jethro, and he sees a very unusual sight. He sees a burning bush. Then God speaks to him from the burning bush, and he tells him to go to Pharaoh and ask Pharaoh to let his people go. In Exodus chapter 3:13 we read, Moses said to God, "Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? Then what shall I tell them?" God said to Moses, "I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you." God also said to Moses, "Say to the Israelites, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever, the name by which I am to be remembered from generation to generation." In verse 15 we read that God tells Moses to say to the Israelites that the Lord has sent him to them. The word Lord, L-O-R-D in capital letters, is a translation from 4 Hebrew letters, Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. Here I have illustrated these letters. Notice that I have arranged these letters not two-dimensionally, but around a circle. The last letter of Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey will connect with the first letter of Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. In this discussion, it will become clear why I've done this. On the right-hand side are the letters Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. The letters are arranged from right to left because Hebrew is read from right to left. On the left-hand side are the English letters that correspond to these 4 Hebrew letters, YHVH. In verse 14 of Exodus chapter 3, we read that God says to Moses that Moses is to say to the Israelites that I am has sent him to them. Now the word here, I am, is in Hebrew actually Yehovah, which means I will be. And then in verse 15 of Exodus chapter 3, God says to Moses to tell the Israelites that his name, the Lord, has sent him to them. Now the word here, Lord, is Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. Let's see if there's a connection between the first name that God gives of himself, I am, or I will be, Yehovah, with the second name that God gives of himself, which is Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. So if we look at, on the right hand side, the letters Yud, Hey, which are the first 2 letters, and the corresponding English letters on the left hand side, YH. Yud, Hey are the first 2 letters of a Hebrew word Yehovah, which means he will be. So in God's name is the meaning that he will be, and that corresponds to the first name that God gave of himself to Moses, which is I am, or Yehovah, which is Hebrew for I will be. And we see here a connection between the first name, I will be, with the second name that God gives of himself to Moses, Yehovah, which is he will be. We now move on, or in this case we move around to the second or third letter, Hey and Vav. Remember, we read from right to left in Hebrew. On the right hand side in the background we see the letters Hey and Vav. Then in the foreground we see the corresponding letters from right to left, H and O or V. The reason I have placed an O and a V together is that the letter Vav in Hebrew can be used both as a consonant with a V sound and as a vowel with an O sound. The letters Hey and Vav, in this case Vav has the vowel O sound, are the first two letters of the Hebrew word Hoveh, which means he is, or he is present. So the name Yehovah, which we translate often as Lord in capital letters, corresponds in meaning to the first name that God gave of himself to Moses, that is his name, I am, or in Hebrew, Ehyeh, which means I will be. Then we move around to the third and fourth letters of these four Hebrew letters, Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. These third and fourth letters are Vav and Hey. Vav and Hey are seen in the background on the left, and the corresponding English letters V and H are seen in the foreground on the right. Vav and Hey are the first two letters of the Hebrew Vehayah, which means and he was. Moving around further, the third letter of Vehayah, which means and he was, is the Yud, which in English is the Y, which brings us in full circle back to the beginning of the four letters, Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. It is at this point that the last letter of Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey connects with the first letter of Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. The Hey connects with the Yud. And so, as we come full circle around God's name, we see embedded in his name its meaning, that which describes that he will exist forever, Yehyeh, he will be, that he is always present, Hoveh, and that he always existed with no beginning, Vehayah, and he was.